Meantime, despite Joe Biden's gaffes, Fox News polls show the former vice president either leading or neck and neck with the president in some key battleground states, like in once deep red Texas, where Joe Biden leads the president by 1 point. Let's bring in Karl Rove. He's a former White House deputy chief of staff and a Fox News contributor. Karl, it is always good to see you. You're in Texas, sir. It's your home state. And I just wanted to start, if I could, with some of these polls coming out of Texas here. It's about who do you trust to do a better job? And let's put this on the screen. When it comes to the economy and immigration, the president is doing pretty well in Texas. You can see he leads there. When it comes to race relations and coronavirus, Joe Biden leads. Kind of surprising because overall, Joe Biden has a 1 point lead, of course, plus or minus 3 points, well within the margin of error. But is there something here that surprises you when it comes to who would do a better job, Karl?
Not really. I mean, I think the coronavirus and race issues are difficult for the president to deal with. One, because he's the president and Biden is nowhere to be seen on these issues except when he wants to surface. So Biden can pick and choose the moments that he comes forward. The president can't. Though, let's step back. This is part of a broader drama. And if you take a look not only at the Fox polls, but the New York Times polls, in key battleground states, the president in many of those states is behind. And in some states, it's close and within the margin of error, as you say. But let's be honest about it. The president is behind today. All the national polls suggest that he's behind. Real Clear Politics average is now close to 9 points. 6 weeks ago, it was 5. Now, these things happen in campaigns. In May of 1988, George Herbert Walker Bush was behind Michael Dukakis by 19 points and won by nearly 8. In 1948, August of 1948, Harry S. Truman, the incumbent president, was behind Tom Dewey by 9 points in late August, causing Clark Clifford to write the famous memo on charting a strategy forward to him. So the question is not where are the polls today, but what does the president need to do in order to regain the advantage? And remember, he's got some powerful tools. He is the president, and all these polls show that on the issue that tends to be #1 in a campaign, namely the economy, he still has an advantage. But he's got to do, in my opinion, 3 things. What does he want to do next? No president gets reelected by simply saying, I've done a good job. So last night he was asked this question by Sean Hannity. He needs to get a better answer. But this is the most important thing. The second most important thing, what are the big choices that he wants to make this issue about? Things on which he can contrast himself with Joe Biden. And the least important, but still important, is what are the Biden weaknesses that he ought to exploit? Things like the statements that he's made about China, his weaknesses on China policy, for example. But you can't win unless you've got a disciplined, focused campaign strategy. And these polls point to the president and his team needing to re-examine what they're doing and come up with a better game plan.
Well, I'm curious because you put that board back up, Karl. I mean, your top one there is what is he going to do next? You know, he's kind of going after Obamacare now. You know, he wants the Supreme Court to look at that. And it's one of those issues that has polled very well for Democrats. And you say, well, you know, some political pundits think maybe that's not the best move to be going after Obamacare right now. What are your thoughts, and what do you think should be the answer for that top question you just rolled out?
Well, let's first of all, he's got time to do this. Where he's got to have this all ready is in the 3rd week of August, when he stands up in front of the American people and accepts the nomination of his party. Realize Biden, it doesn't have an agenda of what he wants to do. He's outsourced this. Remember, he's got these committees, 6 committees. He appointed 5 members of the committees. Bernie appointed 3 members of the committees. Both Bernie and Biden both appointed a co-chairman. And those 6 committees on the big issues of the campaign are supposed to figure out what Joe Biden believes. So he hasn't done what we don't know what he's going to do for the next 4 years either. So both of these men are in the same place. President's got time. But you mentioned health care. The president needs to have an affirmative agenda. And the good news is that Republicans in Congress have been talking about one. Let's let small businesses band together and get the same discounts for insurance that big companies get. Let's expand the ability of people to save money tax-free for their out-of-pocket medical expenses. Let's have transparency in pricing and outcomes. Administration's done a lot in this regard. They can explain what they're going to do more in that regard. But the president has to lay out what it is that he wants to do over the next 4 years.
Well, you talked about the going after Joe Biden's weaknesses here. I want to play the Joe Biden gaffe and then get your response on the other side.
People don't have a job. People don't have anywhere to go. They don't know what they're going to do. And a lot of people you have unnecessarily. Now we have over 120 million dead from COVID.
Yeah, and the president came out and he tweeted, we don't have time to put it on the screen, saying, look, he's not playing with a full deck. So the president there going after his weaknesses. You don't think that's effective, Karl?
I think it's effective, but it's number 3 on the list. You got to pay attention to number 1. What is it I want to do? And number 2, the contrast. Here's what I want to do. Here's what he wants to do. These weaknesses, like Biden's inability to connect 2 sentences, complete sentences together, that is going to be an issue that's going to emerge and grow itself over the course of the campaign. As we see more of Joe Biden, I've been watching these interviews that he does with local TV stations every day or two. He's not good. He's dreadful. He can't string together 2 sentences. But when we get into the heat of the campaign in August, September, and October, we're going to see this, and we're going to see it most prominently in the debates. If Biden doesn't have a better game together by the time we get to the debates, saying things like he said yesterday can color those debates and color a lot of people's final perceptions of the campaign.
Karl Rove, always good to see you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.